Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Bible study in Luke chapter 8. We're kind of picking up in the middle of a story. Jesus, in the last video, sailed across the Sea of Galilee. He calmed the storm. He sailed to the Gerasenes, the country of the Gerasenes, and he met a demon-possessed man who was possessed by a multitude of demons who gave their name as Legion. Legion has been speaking through this demon-possessed man. He asked Jesus. Let me get my notes out. If you don't have the notes yet, there are links down in the description where you can find them. But anyway, this demon-possessed man, he's kind of like the town crazy person. He lives in the tombs. He runs around naked. He cuts himself with stones, but he also has some almost superhuman abilities, like superhuman strength, where no one can bind him, even in chains. So Jesus is having this interaction with this demon that possesses the man. The demon acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, and he asks Jesus not to cast him out into the abyss. And that's where we want to pick up on that phrase. What does it mean when he says that? Well, let me read the text. And they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. What does that mean? If you haven't watched the first video, I definitely encourage you to go back and watch the video for verse 26 through 31 before picking up on this one. Okay, so let's read that again, verse 31. And they begged him, the demon begged Jesus, not to command them to depart into the abyss. Twice in Luke's account, the demon begged Jesus not to pass judgment on him. And I think that that's the idea here. In verse 28, it says, I beg you, do not torment me. And in verse 31, they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. This Greek word abyss, it's an interesting word. It's found 9 times that I can find in the New Testament, the actual Greek term that's translated abyss. 7 of the 9 are in Revelation, where it's translated as the bottomless pit. The other is in kind of a challenging text in Romans chapter 10, verse 7, where it's translated as the abyss. I think in the King James Version it's translated as the deep. It's that verse about who shall descend into heaven and bring Christ down? Who shall descend into the deep and bring Christ up again? Something like that. Better go read it for yourself. And then obviously the 9th time is here in this text. So what was the demon asking Jesus not to do? Matthew records a very similar statement that the demon makes. Quote, have you come here to torment us before the time? What time? It seems like that's a reference to the judgment, where all of the demons are going to be punished. Satan is going to be punished. Evidently, the demons know their future fate. They know that they're destined for punishment. A lot of people think of hell as like a place that the demons and Satan rule over, and they get to like manage it and punish all the evil sinners. That's not exactly the way that the Bible presents it. It's actually talked about as a place where the demons will be cast as well. They will also be punished for their rebellion against God. Matthew chapter 25, verse 41, talking about the judgment. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. And so the demon in Luke chapter 8, Legion, appears to have been concerned that Jesus had showed up and was going to pass judgment on him earlier than the designated time, the judgment day. He's worried that he was going to receive his punishment. Oh, I already read that. And I wanted to pull kind of an application and kind of a side note from this. I just thought it was really interesting that the demon knows Jesus. He acknowledges him as being greater than him. He knows he can't win. And even more, he knows that he's destined for eternal judgment. And yet he's still on Satan's side. He's still fighting against God. Why is that? Why fight if you know that you can't succeed? Was it just to do as much damage as you could to God's cause and to damn as many people as you can before God sends you to hell as well? I was thinking about that. I was like, maybe it's just because the demon wanted to do his own thing. He knew the way that God wanted him to live. He knew God was superior to him, and while he had the time, he was going to live the way that he wanted to live. Perhaps that's the case. We know that the demon believed in God. There's no question there. He knew that he wasn't any match for God. But he also knew that it wasn't Judgment Day yet. And he didn't know that Jesus was going to show up that day on the shores of the country of the Gerasenes. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, okay, that might be a possibility. Is that a far-fetched possibility? I thought, well, isn't that true of a lot of us as well? Isn't that a lot of our mindset? Many people in our world, they believe in God. Right? If you ask them, they believe in God. And I think they're genuine about that statement. And they know that if they had to contend with him, they certainly were no match for him. But they also know that it isn't Judgment Day yet. And so they live the way that they want to, rather than God's way, and they think, maybe I have time to make it right later on. But unfortunately, some people will end up meeting Jesus sooner than they think that they will, through an early death or disease or something, or maybe Jesus comes back. And they might be in the predicament that this demon is in. He thinks he's going to receive early judgment. Well, a lot of us think, we have forever to live. But Judgment Day might come quicker than we actually think it might. Okay, verse 32 and 33. Now a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him to let them enter these, so he gave them permission. And then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. So the demons knew that they weren't going to be allowed to stay in the man and continue to oppress him. They knew Jesus wasn't going to allow that. So curiously, they request to be sent into a herd of pigs that's feeding nearby. And I think even more curiously, Jesus obliges them, and he lets them do it. And when Jesus had banished them, they go into these pigs, and then the pigs all run down a steep cliff and drown in the Sea of Galilee. Mark tells us that there were about 2,000 pigs in this pig herd. So I've never seen 2,000 pigs gathered together in one place. I've seen like 10. But this is a huge herd of pigs that all run down the hill, commit suicide. Well, demon-possessed. Demon-assisted suicide in the Sea of Galilee. I'm sure the fish were happy that day, but I'm sure the pig herders were not very happy. And you think about that, it's like, what an odd conclusion to this story. Every time I read this, I'm like, this is a strange story. And I think there's an application there, and we touched on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about demon possession. Maybe that was in the last video. God doesn't always satisfy our curiosities. In this case, God doesn't fill us in on all the details that we are curious about. Why does Jesus let the demons enter the pigs? Why did the pigs run down the hill? I still have a bunch of questions about how this man can be possessed by a legion of demons and how that works and why it happened and does it still happen today. And God just doesn't give us a lot of information on that. I think the reason for that is because that's true of a lot of the Bible. We have a lot of curiosities that God doesn't answer because he's telling a story and he's primarily focused or interested in focusing in and narrowing in on the main points of his story, and the rest of the stuff is left, in some cases, somewhat vague, and it's not for us to know. I think there are times, like maybe in this story, there's a couple different questions that we have, and it's okay just to say, I'm not sure. I really don't know the answers. I could speculate on them, but how much good is that actually? What I know is that this story shows that Jesus is known as the Son of God to the demons. He's superior to those demons, that he has the power to free this man from their oppression. And an application, I guess, would be that he can free me from the oppression of Satan as well. And no doubt there are other lessons, but that seems to be what God wants us focused on. And maybe one day when we get to heaven, we can ask our questions about the pigs. I've personally never heard an explanation of the pigs and why Jesus allowed this to happen and what the whole point was, that I've been like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the real explanation. That guy figured it out. Maybe you have, and maybe I'm just dumb. If you have, leave it down in the description. I'd be interested in reading it. All right, let's finish this story off now. Verse 33, 30. Oh, wait, we got a couple verses to read. Verse 34 through 37. When the herdsmen saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. And then people went out to see what had happened. And they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it told them how the demon-possessed man had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The pig herdsmen went and told everybody what had happened in the city and in the surrounding country. And upon hearing the news, the people asked Jesus to leave. Even after seeing, never mind. Well, it says that they asked Jesus to leave because they were afraid. The text says they were seized with great fear. Now, why would they ask Jesus to leave? I think there's a couple possibilities of why they might have been afraid. I think number one, they might have been afraid that Jesus would do more damage to their livelihood. Here, 2,000 pigs had run down the hill, and Jesus had started off with quite a splash. Get it? They didn't want any more of their pigs or other property potentially damaged. 2,000 pigs was enough loss for them for one day. It could have been also that they were overwhelmed by the miracle in their fear of who this man was and what he was doing and what kind of power he had. That got them to ask Jesus to leave, just because they were like, we don't know what this is, but we don't want involved. We just kind of want to go back to our average everyday living. And Jesus, you should just go away so we can go back to normal. That's possible. It might be possible that they asked Jesus to leave because of like a proper fear of God and the power that God had. We see this in the Israelites in the Old Testament on occasion. We also see it in Peter when Jesus fills his fishing nets with fish in Luke chapter 5, verse 8. You remember Peter says after the miracle, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." He recognized that Jesus was something special, that he was a sinner, and that he wasn't worthy of Jesus' presence. It's possible, and the Greek term would allow for this to be the case, that they asked Jesus to leave just because they were in awe of him and felt themselves unworthy of him being in their presence. I've typically always read it as in they just wanted Jesus to leave because he was an inconvenience and because all the pigs had drowned in the sea, but maybe that's not the case. Okay, verse 38 and 39. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. Jesus was leaving. He was getting back in his boat, and the previously demon-possessed man came up to him, and he wanted to go with him. He wanted to become like one of his permanent followers. He probably didn't have a lot of connections, or family back in the city. And he wanted to go with Jesus. But Jesus didn't permit it. He told the man to go into the city, to his home, and to his friends, and to tell all of them about the mercy that the Lord had had on him. And so that's exactly what he did. And he proclaimed the message in the Decapolis. Now, the Decapolis is a region. You can see it. There's a square box around it over on the right side of your map in the notes. And the Decapolis, as described on the oh-so-trustworthy Wikipedia, is a group of 10 cities on the eastern frontier of the Roman Empire in the southeastern Levant in 1st century BC and AD. They formed a group because of their language, culture, location, and political status, with each functioning as an autonomous city-state dependent on Rome. So these are all east of the Sea of Galilee. There's a region there that's highlighted on the map, and he went into that area and told everybody about Jesus. You got to think that his his testimony about the events that had happened to him would have been pretty powerful, because he had probably built up a pretty strong reputation for himself as a crazy person and a supernaturally strong person who couldn't be contained. And then when you see him walking around fully clothed in town, what would your question be? It would be, what happened? How did you go from that to this? And that would be a perfect opportunity to say, well, Jesus happened, and it would be a great witness. Let's close with one application. This man probably thought that getting into that boat with Jesus was the best direction that he could possibly take. Who better to follow? Where better to go than with this man who had freed you from this oppression and had power over demons? And yet, when he asks, Jesus says, no, I have something else that I want you to do. I thought about this. We may set our life in a certain direction, on a certain trajectory, thinking that this is the best possible thing that I could be doing to serve the Lord. And God may come along and say, no, you're actually not correct about that. I have even better ways to use you, but they're ways that you never expected. That's kind of what he does here. God may change our plans to accomplish more through us than we could have ever thought possible. So I kind of feel like this process is going on in my own life right now, in the life of my wife. But God knows better how to use us than we know how to use ourselves. He knows better how to use us to serve him than we know how to serve him. And we have to, if we really do believe that he knows better than us, we have to be willing to kind of, roll with the punches. Maybe that's not the best way to say it, but to go with the flow of his providence. How about that? That sounds good. Anyway, I'm going to quote myself. You're probably like, that wasn't very good, actually. Anyway, let us return to the topic at hand. So we have to be willing to flow with the stream of God's providence. That's what I'm going to leave you with today. But really, he knows better. I think we would all live incredible lives if we trusted, if we were open to any possibility that God put before us. If we just put full trust in him and we said, I will go wherever, I will do whatever, use my life for your glory, I think we would probably all live incredible lives. It might not be the easiest life, might not be the most comfortable, the most predictable lives in the world, but they would be incredible lives. So I'll actually leave you with that. I hope you guys have an enjoyable day, and I will talk to you tomorrow, Lord willing.